Yeah, for
Okay.
the warming up of atmosphere.
Uh-huh.
What I call it,
Global warming.
global warming.
Mhm.
But
Hello, everyone. This is the 5th Epochal Revelation Fellowship. I'm Reverend Dr. Roger Paul. Today is June 23rd, 2013. And today we're going to continue our study on, well, from the chart, basically, Origin, History, and Destiny of Universal Reality. And we will have one more meeting on this, and then we're going to shift gears and start at the forward. And that'll be exciting. Start from the beginning and work our way through. And we'll also be starting on the life of Christ at the same time. And we'll go all the way through the life of Christ. So if you're watching from home, please come back and watch these with us. And what we've been studying the last 12 weeks or 10 weeks is going to prepare you for what's in the forward. Have y'all looked at the forward at all lately? This actually explains everything in the forward. So when we go through the forward, you're going to be well prepared to understand the forward, the most difficult part of the book. Okay, so let's take up. I skipped over a few slides here. We're starting from slide number 33, and we're going to go through a little bit of this, and then we're going to skip over the triunities, since we went over that on Wednesday night, and we're going to be short on time. So we're not going to make it all the way through these slides, but we're going to make it through. We'll make it through a good part of it. So let's start with God the Sevenfold. And Diane or Linda, would you start with that first slide there?
Sure. God the Sevenfold. Deity personality anywhere actually functioning in time and space. The personal paradise deities and their creative associates functioning in and beyond the borders of the central universe, and power personalizing as the supreme being on the first creature level of unifying deity revelation in time and space. This level, the grand universe, is the sphere of the time-space dissension of paradise personalities in reciprocal association with the time-space ascension of evolutionary creatures. God the Sevenfold may be listed in descending order as follows: the Universal Father, the Eternal Son, the Infinite Spirit, the Supreme Being, the seven Master Spirits of the seven super-universes, the Ancients of Days, the Creator, sons, and daughters of the local universes.
Okay, so God the Sevenfold. And they say this is the deity personality actually functioning in time and space. And as you go down here a little bit, they say that it's power personalized as the supreme being. So what they're saying here is this is the step of deity down to the children of time, right? And in doing that, we're adding to the experiential growth of the middle one, the supreme being. Okay? But it's also, you'll notice here, it says that this is the space descension of paradise personalities. So they're descending down to us. Okay? In reciprocal association with the time-space ascension of evolutionary creatures. So it works both ways, doesn't it? You know, they go down the ladder to get to us, and we go back up the ladder to get to God.
yin yang.
Yin yang. There you go. So, and you'll notice down here at the bottom one, on this slide, it's listed as Creator, Son, and Daughter of the local universes.
That's interesting.
Huh?
I noticed that. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Who's the daughters of the local universe?
The local universe mothers here.
That's right, creative Mother Spirit. Local universe, creative Mother Spirit. And this is God the Sevenfold. Now, on the chart, we've talked about this before. This is this right here, right? If I can find my pointer. See this right here? Levels of God the Sevenfold. Now, on the chart, it's listed in the ascending order, right? They list the Creator, Sons first, the Ancients of Days, the seven Master Spirits, the Supreme Being, God the Spirit, God the Son, and God the Father. What's really interesting about this is the fact that, did I skip over?
Yeah, one.
Yeah, okay. What's interesting about this is the Supreme Being. This one right here. The Supreme Being is basically turning into the God of the seven super universes, right? Through experience. So it's kind of interesting to me, the existential beings, the Father, Son, and the Spirit, are listed first, and then after that come what? The experiential related beings, right? And the Supreme Being is stuck right in the middle, isn't he? You know? So it's kind of an interesting way that they list that. So we have the original Trinity at the first, and then after that we have the sub-deities, or the latter spokes, as you could say, to the deities. Okay. The concept of the I Am. Now we've gone through this exhaustively on Wednesday night, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all want to just read through these and kind of hit the highlights? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So let's start from here. Diane, you want to take the first slide there?
The concept of the I Am. The concept of the I Am is a philosophic concession which we make to the time-bound, space-fettered, finite mind of man, to the impossibility of creature comprehension of eternity existences, non-beginning, non-ending realities and relationships. To the time-space creature, all things must have a beginning, save only the one uncaused, the primeval causes of causes. Therefore do we conceptualize this philosophic value level as the I Am, at the same time instructing all creatures that the eternal Son and the infinite Spirit are co-eternal with the I Am. In other words, that there never was a time when the I Am was not the Father of the Son and with him of the Spirit.
Okay, let's stop there for a second. Okay, so they give us this concept of the I Am, the primeval causes of causes, right? The beginning of the beginnings. I am that I am. You know, that's what, who heard?
Abraham.
Huh?
Moses.
Moses.
And Moses.
Moses, when he went up to the mountain, right? The I am that I am. But then they go on to say here, which is really interesting, that there never was a time when there was the I am without the Son and Spirit, because they're existential. So they set us up saying that the I am existed first, the Father of all, everything, right? The universal Father. And then they go on to say that the eternal Son and the infinite Spirit always have been too. So this concept, it kind of puts a monkey wrench in this whole concept, doesn't it? The dividing of the Father. But they say that's how it happened so that we can understand it. Y'all remember this, right?
Yeah.
The Father segmented himself first and created the Son. That's how the I Am became the Father. Okay? You could not have a Father without the Son. You could not have a Spirit without the Father and the Son. Okay, so the order of things to existence started out with the I Am, which is this. And they say there never has been a time when they weren't all three, but that's what they're saying here. And then he segmented himself, made the Son, and what happened then? Paradise appeared at the same time, right? What's that? That's the fourth absolute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then the Father and the Son segmented themselves and created what? The Spirit in unison. And what happened then? Lona appeared. And we remember that the nuclear isle of paradise is an absolute, but Havona is not, right?
Right.
It's transcendental, that's right. But another interesting thing is that Havona is existential. Remember what existential means?
It's always been.
Always been, always has, will be. So it's kind of interesting that they consider the isle as part of the absolute, but Havona is not.
So then Havona doesn't have any time.
It doesn't, yeah, time, Havona transcends time, okay? Time actually starts at the top of paradise, but to Havona, time is just a sequence of events, okay? Now what's time to us? Time means a lot to us, the seven super universes, everything, because the beginning of time, if you think of it, the trapped beginning of time starts with what? It starts with the seven super universes, doesn't it? Not Havona, which is an interesting concept. Because why would that be? Because as soon as the Spirit appeared, this segmentation in the Spirit appeared, Havona appeared. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And if Havona appeared at the same time, it transcends time. Then time would not start here, because why would it not start there instead of the 7 super universes? Because until you had that finite associated with it, there was no reason to track it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Y'all have to remember that Havona, which surrounds paradise, right, is what? It's our training ground to get to the Father. The 7 circuits of Havona you have to think of is really schools to us. The billion worlds of Havona. That's where these ministering spirits teach us. Okay? Is in Havona. One level at a time. And remember, we talked about this. This is going to become important when we study the forward. The first thing we have to recognize was what? That middle one we were talking about, the Supreme Being. That's the first deity we have to recognize. Why is that? Why is it not Christ? Why is it not the Ancients of Days? Because by the time we get there, we already have recognized it, right? You have to stand before Christ and Salvington before you go on. That's the first thing that you did. That is such an important concept. People think, well, I don't have to believe in Christ. I'll just wait till I get to heaven. You know?
You won't.
You won't. That's your local universe father, right? Remember the fathers? Our local universe father, our local universe God is who? Christ. Michael. That's right. Jesus. Okay? So, and you have to recognize that first before you make that first step. Okay?
That's why he told the Pharisees, you've rejected the path to life because
That's right.
you rejected me. You rejected the path to life, so that's why you're on the brink of destruction. Being no more.
And that's also why when you read this, the New Testament comes alive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does.
It makes
perfect sense, because all these sayings and things that Jesus have said, when you understand the background.
Even though I believed it then.
Yes.
But
yes.
now I have the
full story.
Information to back it up.
That's right. That's right. The full story. And which makes it interesting. So what would be the next deity that we must recognize past that? The Ancients of Days. Makes perfect sense, right? Okay. And then who would be the next one?
Supreme Being.
Supreme Being. That's right. Now, when we hit the Supreme Being, we know one thing. We have gone from a Marancha being to a second stage spirit, right? So we're spirit beings. And so that gives us the boarding rights to move on to where? Havona. So what's the first outer space, the first ring of Havona that we go to? What do you think they're going to teach us first?
How to recognize
The
the
Supreme Being. That's right.
Oh, the Supreme Being.
The Supreme Being.
I thought we, oh yeah, okay. All right.
Okay, because that's what? The God of the 7 super universes. You have to understand your own concepts and your own God before you move on to the next level, right? Can you move on past Christ without recognizing Christ? No. Can you move past the Ancients of Days without going through judgment? No.
So, Roger, now that you went back there again, let me ask you a question. I thought that either when we die, or if there's a dispensational change, that we go before the Ancients of Days for judgment.
Well, you do, but not you personally. You're not aware of this judgment. Your guardian angel has to stand for judgment, and your thought adjuster, which is what? Part of you now, right? Mm-hmm. You haven't fused, but your thought adjuster is what? Your representation to God. When you pray to God, who sends that directly to God immediately? Your thought adjuster does. So your thought adjuster is your communication with God, right? So your thought adjuster and your guardian angels, Zuls, plural, must stand before the Ancients of Days and justify your life, right? You're not conscious of this. You're not aware.
What are we going to do when we get to them?
Pardon me?
What do we actually
We have to
do?
recognize them
Okay,
as our superiors and our deity pathway to God.
okay, that's what I was
Okay,
thinking.
so think of it this way. They judge you when you die. Once you've got certification that there is something salvageable about you. What makes you salvageable? Well, believe. All you have to do is believe that you will survive, right?
Mhm.
That's the salvageable part. You want to do the will of God, right? So, if you're salvageable, then you go on to the first mansion world. Does that mean that everything's perfect and hunky-dory? No, you still are learning. You go through the mansion worlds, you become a citizen of Jerusalem, right? What's the next step? That you've gone all the way through all the Maracha steps at that point. The next step is what? To stand before whom? Michael,
Okay.
okay?
Can we stand before Michael before we fuse?
Only, no. You have to fuse to stand before Michael, from my understanding. Because you don't stand before Michael until you get your walking papers, as they say, as first stage spirits,
Mhm.
right? So when you've done all that you're supposed to, you've learned to recognize all the deities and all this. This is the things you learn in the mansion worlds. And you stand before Michael. He says one of two things, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He
Either-
says,
either
"Well done, my
done,
good
or
and
Depart
faithful
from
servant,"
me, I don't know you.
or "Depart from me, I don't know you." What happens at that time? Because you'd already been in the mansion worlds, wouldn't you?
Mhm.
I guess you go back in remedial school and you start again, don't you?
Is that
Well,
what happens?
I don't know.
Well, the
Doesn't
thing
say.
is, I thought that once you fused,
Once you fuse, you're in like Flint.
then how could he say
That's
don't
depart
know.
from me?
That's after Christ Michael.
Yeah. No, you fuse. Once you fuse, you become a son of God. And when you stand before Michael, you're only going to hear one thing.
Right, so he doesn't
He
Yeah.
doesn't tell us to depart,
to
right?
tell
Yeah.
depart from me.
That's right. So, but we don't know for sure. He could call you beforehand at any time. Right? This is the way it normally happens. That's what they're saying. Right?
Where does the Supreme Being, where do we locate him?
The Supreme Being came from paradise. Okay? It's a paradise entity. Okay? I think I misled y'all down the wrong road here.
How's that?
With Michael saying, "Depart from me." That's usually done by on your first judgment.
Thought adjuster would do that.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's-
Guardian
yeah.
angel.
I misled y'all.
Of course, we
I
never
stand
be
corrected.
conscious of it.
Huh? You won't be conscious. That's right. That's right. Okay. The Supreme Being comes after the Ancients of Days. So we go to Michael. He says, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." You get your first stage spirit, right?
And you go to
Your-
Ravona.
Huh?
And you go to Ravona.
And no, you don't. You go to the minor sector and major sector. And after you've left the major sector, I believe it is, don't quote me on
The
this.
capital of. the
Yeah, it's a major sector. Then you become a second stage spirit. And at that point, you stand before the Ancients of Days before you go on to Uversa.
Before you go to university.
At Uversa,
Yeah,
before you go to Pavona, is what I meant to say. Yeah.
But I think her question was, where would you find the Supreme
Yeah.
Being?
Yeah.
The
After
Supreme
that step,
Being.
the Supreme Being would be your next step.
But the
You would
really,
go to Havona and be trained to recognize the Supreme Being.
but as far as I know, the Supreme Being, it does not really have a place.
No, it's not a physical person,
Um,
right? It is a personality, but it's not a physical person. It's more like God the Father.
So he doesn't dwell.
He doesn't
Exactly.
dwell in one place. He dwells
Okay.
throughout the entire
He's
seven
present.
super universes. It's presence, right?
it's all.
But what you learn in Havona on the first circuit is the angels teach us how to recognize the Supreme Being. It's that experiential part of God. You have to recognize that before they go on and try to teach you how to recognize what's the next step.
The Spirit.
The Spirit, infinite Spirit. And then the next step after that would be the Son, right? And once you recognize those two, and these are all parts of those 7 levels of Havona, the billion worlds of Havona. And by the time you get to the very last one, then you're ready to go to where? paradise. And what do you do in paradise? You recognize God the Father. And you stand before God the Father in paradise. The dwelling place of God the Father. Now, would you know you were standing before God the Father if you had not been taught these things? No. If you were transported there right now, in a physical form, you'd disintegrate because of the power of God. But as a spiritual being, if you weren't taught to recognize Him, you could be right in His presence and not know it. That's what this is all about.
Have to learn to be conscious of it.
Conscious of God, yeah. Discernment of God.
And it seems like the first step too would be actually recognizing the thought adjuster. I mean, that's like
That is the very first
yeah, that's
step.
the first thing.
The
First
very
thing we
first
have to
step.
do.
You know, when they talk about in the book, listening for the voice of the thought adjuster, they're talking about a literal voice of God.
Yes.
Y'all know that, don't you?
It's still small voice.
Still small voice. And if you get to that first stage spirit, you will be attuned to that voice. You'll be able to hear God in your head. You know, you might think you're a little bit nuts the first time it happens, you know, but, you know, you can communicate with God. I was talking to Diane about this just yesterday, or this morning, that we cannot say, you know, when they start talking about channeling in the Urantia book and stuff, I have this aversion to channeling.
They talk about it in the ranch?
No, they don't talk about it in the Urantia book. But this is what I'm saying, that a lot of groups are talking about channeling constantly, that people are getting channeled messages from beyond type thing. And I have this aversion for it because you can only get a message from one source, right? Where's the one source you can get a message from?
Within.
Thought adjuster.
The thought adjuster within. That's right. That's right.
Well,
That's the only being that's allowed to communicate through you,
Well,
right?
I
Special
know, and I'm wondering
occasions.
where are these,
Beings, yeah.
that are getting channeled?
Yes, that's exactly right. Let me put it this way. If somebody starts talking to me through something other than God, I'm worried about devil possessions come back from after 2,000 years. You know, that's what I'd be worried about. But the only communication you can get from the outside universe through you is your thought adjuster. Period.
I was going to say, because externally, there are occasions like when Mary, when they appeared with a message.
Yeah, but there's always an appearance with that, isn't there?
No.
There's always a being associated with that.
Gabriel.
They don't talk
Yeah,
to
there's
you
always
through.
a being.
They don't just start talking to you through your brain. You see them.
I've
So,
never heard of it.
yeah, that's exactly right. So, you know, and this is a touchy subject to a lot of people. But when people say that they start receiving messages, that is possible. I have no issue with that. Because they say in the Urantia book, revelation never stops, does it? We can be, God could be revealed to us all day every day of our lives, right? This is not the only revelation from God, is it?
No.
No, it never stops.
And you know what? It's not infallible either.
It's not infallible, that's
Jesus
right.
said anything that man's hands have to do with, it's not perfect.
It's not perfect,
And
that's
that
right.
includes direction.
So that means that if you reach 7th stage, and you're a 7th stage spirit, you may be getting messages directly from God, right? Through your thought adjuster. It's possible. But, let me ask you this. What is the purpose in this on an average, everyday process? Because, I ask you this because the only messages from God that we would get, that we would share with other beings that's not related to us, would be something, what? That would help other beings. Okay? So when I help the group, help other beings, right? So I always come back to, when I hear these supposed messages from other beings and stuff, what benefit is this to us as a group? What does this do for us? Is this making our group stronger? Is it increasing our spiritual awareness? Is it making us closer to God? If not, is it something we should be even listening to? I don't think so. You know, because there's not a test you can give, right? I've had channelers around me before, and I always say, if you're a channeler, tell me who you are. Okay, I know this book well enough. If they say they're Melchizedek, I'll have them a dozen questions, and I'll know whether they're Melchizedek or not. Right? You can test them. But none of them wants to answer questions. Have you noticed that? None of them wants to be tested. And that would be the first thing I do. If I hear a message from God in my head, wouldn't you want to test that message? How do you know it's from God? Right? If it doesn't benefit mankind, if it doesn't benefit your family, if it doesn't benefit your group, your religious group, if it doesn't make you more spiritually close to God the Father, if it doesn't give you communication from Jesus, his Son, if it is not a communication from the God of our universe, who would be Michael or Jesus, right? What is the purpose in it? There is no purpose, as far as I'm concerned. So this is why you have to be careful. I don't listen to everyone who says they hear a spirit and they hear this. That's fine for themselves, but don't tell me, because I'm going to question you if you tell me that. And I become adamant about it. Anybody that knows me knows I become adamant about it, because I do not think you should mislead the children of God. That is not correct, right? Because if you tell them something wrong, you send them down the wrong path. Does this thing ever send us down the wrong path? Never has, that I know of. And when it does give us speculation, it tells us that it's speculation. And it tells us why it's speculation, because we don't have concepts to understand it. Okay? So that's what we're talking about here. So, let's get back to this I am. I don't even know how I got on that subject now. Y'all will forgive me for that.
We were talking about, being able to hear your thought adjuster.
Being able to hear your thought adjuster.
That's your communication.
That's right. That's your communication. And that's part of God the Father here in the I am, right? Okay, so we talked about here this, that there never was a time when the I am was not the Father of the Son, and with him of the Spirit. Okay? So, if you think about it, what it's stating here is the Son is also the Father with the Father himself of the Spirit. Right? So who's the Father of the Son, the Spirit? The Son and the Father are Father of the Spirit. You see how this fatherhood flows? Okay? And who's the Father of Michael and the creative mother spirits? The Son and the Spirit. Right? The Son being the Father of the creator sons, Jesus. And the Spirit being the mother of whom? The creative mother spirits. Right? Or the father, mother of the creative mother spirit, which is an interesting concept too. Okay, so let's keep going, Diane.
Okay. The infinite is used to denote the fullness, the finality, implied by the primacy of the first source and center. The theoretical I am is a creature philosophic extension of the infinity of will, but the infinite is an actual value level representing the eternity intention of the true infinity of the absolute and unfettered free will of the universal Father. The concept is sometimes designated the Father infinite.
Okay, now does any of this make sense to anyone? Or do I need to go through it from scratch again? Okay, let's look at this. The infinity is used to denote the fullness, the finality implied by the primacy of the first source and center. Okay, so the infinite is used to denote fullness. In other words, it's only the first source and center that fills up all infinity. You follow me? So if you think we don't have a concept for infinity, never beginning, never ending, but our concept of the first source and center, the first cause, the Father, fills up everything, right? There is nothing before the Father, is there? They talk about like the Father just popped up and there was infinity before, but that's not the case. There was no infinity before the Father. That's why they call him the first source and center. That's why they call the Son the what? The second source and center, right? Okay. The theoretical, that's why they say theoretical I am here, right? The theoretical I am is a creature philosophic extension of the infinity of will. Whose will?
God's will.
God's will, right? What is that? That's the actual will of God, not the potential will of God. Remember those three we talked about? Or 7 of them, I think it was? Okay. Representing the tension of the true infinity, the absolute and the unfettered free will of the universal Father. See these terms popping up all the time? Absolute. Remember all the absolutes we studied? What are these guys? Right? A qualified absolute, which is what? The deity absolute, right? The universal absolute and the unqualified absolute. Remember we studied those? This is what we're talking about. The absolute and the unfettered free will of the universal Father. This concept is sometimes designated as the Father infinite. Why not? I mean, without the infinite, there is no Father, right? Without the Father, there is no infinite. Okay? The Father is the infinite. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay.
Diana, I'm going to lose it after the bottom of this paragraph. So.
Okay. Much of the confusion of all orders of being, high and low, in their efforts to discover the Father infinite, is inherent in their limitations of comprehension. The absolute primacy of the universal Father is not apparent on sub-infinite levels. Therefore, is it probable that only the eternal Son and the infinite Spirit truly know the Father as an infinity. To all other personalities, such a concept represents the exercise of faith.
Okay, so it's our faith that allows us to get through this, doesn't it? And it's only these two that understand the Father as the infinite, right? Pretty simple.
Because they are the same.
Because they are the same, right? Why would you think that they are, if you think about it, why are they the same? Because they're existential,
Yeah.
right?
They are.
They experience
Right.
the same thing as the Father. So, do y'all see where the experiential part of life is so important?
Absolutely.
You know, that's why we go through this. And we were talking about this just the other day too. I think that the Paradise Creator Sons, who are created up here, right? The Paradise Creator Sons, why do you think they have to go through 7 bestowals? All 700,000 of them have to go through 7 bestowals. Y'all know that, right?
Experience.
It's the experience.
To personalize their experience.
To personalize their experience. So when they get done, they get the same experience as who? The Eternal Son. Y'all realize that the Eternal Son basically had to go the same experience as all the 700 created thousand. Huh? Through Havana and Paradise. That's right. That's right. You notice there's 7 levels of Havana? You notice that? Don't you think that that had something to do with the experience of the Eternal Son?
Oh yeah.
You think about that?
So did he actually go somewhere?
He went through the bestowals. He had to somehow go through the experience, whether he actually left or not, no one knows.
Okay.
But he went through the same bestowal experience as the Creator Sons. That's why the Creator Sons do it. They mimic what the Father does. Remember, paradise is the pattern
Yep.
for all the universe,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
These are the pattern for all the deities, right? So the Son mimics who? The Father. And the Creator Sons mimic who? The Son. Okay? The Spirit mimics who? The Father. Right? And the Son. Got that? The local universe created mother spirits. Who do you think they mimic?
Infinite Spirit.
The infinite Spirit. It's all in training. That's the experiential part, right? Now, I'm taking you all the way down this road and I'm going to throw you off the cliff. These 3 deities don't need experience, do they? They're existential.
But they love us so much they allow us to have that experience.
But they love us so much they allow us to have this experience. And they've gone through this experience because of their love for us. Is that not amazing?
It is.
It's not required of them.
Mm-mm.
Is it required of the Creator sons? Yes. They're sons of God, right? Now, when we think about our thought adjuster, which we fuse with, it's part of this, right? It's a fragment of God. So, think of it this way. When the Father fragmented himself and created the Son, he gave a piece of himself, didn't he? What happened when the two of them fragmented themselves and became the Spirit? They gave a piece of themselves, didn't they? Okay? When the Creator sons come to earth, they give them themselves in 7 ways. Every type of being they've created, they have to go through a life in that type of being, right? That's what Michael was doing on this planet. That's what Jesus did. He was finishing his bestowal. He gave a piece of himself to us in what? The Spirit of truth. You think about it. Now, what piece did this infant, the creative Mother Spirit give of herself?
The Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit, right? Where does the third piece come from? The Father, the thought adjuster, right? So we have a piece of the Son, a piece of the Spirit, and we have a piece of the Father within us. That combination, when we die, creates what? Our soul. That's right. And who gives it personality? It comes from us, right?
Well, from
Well,
It comes through the Father to us, and we give it personality.
it's all actually very logical when you.
You think about it that way. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Okay. So that's what we're talking about here. All right? And this is all because of the will of the Father, right?
It's interesting because it was a lot easier when I just believed it all by faith. Now that I know all this other stuff, it's like, wow, it's really complicated, you know?
But it's
Okay.
very much in order, too. You know,
Let's finish this thought in this last paragraph. So who only understands the Father infinite, the Son and the Spirit, right? Why do they understand it? Because they've experienced it, right? Everybody else has to take it by faith,
Yep.
right? That makes sense?
Yeah.
Now see, all this difficult stuff just came crystal clear, right? Okay, this got moved a little bit, but that's okay. The philosophic concept of the I am. Pam, you want to take that?
Absolute primal causation in infinity, the philosophers of the universes attribute to the universal Father, functioning as the infinite, the eternal, and the absolute I am.
Keep going.
There are many elements of danger attendant upon the presentation of the mortal intellect of this idea of an infinite I am, since this concept is so remote from human experiential understanding as to involve serious distortion of meanings and misconception of values.
So we're going to mess it up any way we look at it, right?
Nevertheless, the
Yeah.
philosophic concept of the I am does afford finite beings some basis for an attempted approach to the partial comprehension of the absolute origins and infinite destinies. But in all our attempts to elucidate the genesis and fruition of reality, let it be made clear that this concept of the I am is in all personality, meanings, and values synonymous with the first person of deity, the universal Father of all personalities. But this postulate of the I am is not so clearly identifiable in deified realms of universal reality.
So basically, our best concept is God the Father. That's what this whole paragraph's talking about, right? Because anything past that, we're not really capable of understanding, and we're going to mess up the concept any way you look at it. So I can explain it all day up here, and I'm not going to get it right regardless of what I do, right? That's why we can't get too heady about this stuff, you know, the big head, because none of us knows anything for sure. Okay, but let's go on. The undeified is not clearly identifiable in the undeified realms of the universe reality. And what we
that's the outer space level?
the unqualified, right? The unqualified absolute. That's what they're
Is that
talking
what they're talking about?
The undeified, right. Also, what else would they be talking?
Realms.
Huh?
Undeified realms.
Undeified realms. What else would they be talking about? They'd be talking about paradise. They'd be talking about all the material in the universe, wouldn't they? Because it's undeified, right?
That's true, yeah.
Paradise is not a deity, right? It's an absolute. It's not a deity. Is Havona a deity? No. Is the 7th super universe a deity? No. Is the outer space levels a deity? No. They're all undeified. What deifies these areas is the beings, right? So it's the deities that control these areas that make that space deified, right? So what would be the only undeified areas? The outer space levels, right? That makes sense? Okay, let's keep going.
The I am is the infinite. The I am is also infinity. From the sequential time viewpoint, all reality has its origin in the infinite I am, who saw solitary existence in past infinite eternity must be a finite creature's premier philosophic postulate. The concept of the I am connotes unqualified infinity, the undifferentiated reality of all that could ever be in all of an infinite eternity.
So they're talking about all that out past that's even got beings in it, right? Okay, as far as the human mind or any mind can conceive of infinity, right? All
As-
these are undeified, right?
As an existential concept, the I am is neither deified nor undeified, neither actual nor potential, neither personal nor impersonal, neither static nor dynamic. No qualification can be applied to the infinite except to state that the I am is. The philosophic postulate of the I am is one universe concept, which is somewhat more difficult of comprehension than that of the unqualified absolute.
Okay, do y'all see that? We were just talking about the unqualified absolute, right, being out in the outer space levels. But let's go back here. The existential concept of the I am is neither deified or undeified. Why is that?
Because it's the very beginning and it's
Very beginning, very end.
Very
It encompasses
everything.
all that is deity and all that is not deity.
Right.
Okay? You can't have undeified space without what? Without God being there already. Okay? That's what they're talking about here. Neither actual or potential. Remember that slide on actuals and potentials? About whether God, the will of God, or, gosh, we could go back to that, but I don't almost take the time to do it. But it is neither one. It's both. It encompasses all. So that's why they keep coming to you. Once you understand this, it is neither personal or impersonal. Do you see that? God is not a person. What? God is not a person. He's not impersonal. He is God. There is nothing to compare to him. He is the source of all that is personal. He is the source of all personality. But he does not have personality. He is God, which is separate from everything. That makes sense? That's a hard concept to get. You think, God's personal to me. He's personal in the fact that you have an adjuster, right? But think about this. Remember when we studied the adjusters? They said that you get a non-personal deity fragment of God the Father. Did
What's
they-
that now?
You get a non-personal deity fragment of God the Father. It doesn't have personality.
But once we fuse, it becomes.
Where does it get the personality?
From
From
us.
the Father.
From us.
Not from us, which comes from the Father.
Comes from the Father, the source of all personality, but God is not a personality. See, this is the thing that philosophers drive themselves crazy thinking about, right? It's, you can't think of God as a personality. God is God. He is the I am. That's why they keep coming back to the state of the I am is. That's a verb, right? It's an action word. The I am is. Okay?
Well, the thing that
Exists.
creates always has to be more,
Then the created.
right,
Yes.
higher, but it also has to encompass all of that.
All of that. Yeah, that's why they say here it is neither personal nor impersonal. It's not static or dynamic. Why is it not static or dynamic? Wouldn't you think God would be dynamic? It encompasses the static and dynamic. But He is not static or dynamic. He is the source of static and dynamic. He is the source of personal and impersonal. He is the source of deified and undeified. Right? What do you think we call Him the first source and center?
Because He's everything.
He's everything. And there's no concept or no name that you can give God to make Him separate. So what do they call Him? The I am. He is what He is. He's God. But God is not big enough to encompass Him, is it? When we think of Jesus as the God of our local universe, that's correct, isn't it? He created everything we know of. He created all the planets. He created all the beings. He is the God of our universe. Is God the Father God? He's more than God. He encompasses God. He encompasses all that will ever be God. He encompasses all that will ever be deity. He encompasses all that will be undeity. He encompasses everything that's matter and everything that's not matter. He encompasses not only that, but He encompasses all phases and variations of everything. And what am I saying? Phases and variations.
Everything that could be, will be.
Will be forever.
Right.
On every vibration, you say there may be beings on a different vibration walking around here, we don't see them. He encompasses that too. All possibilities, all potentialities, and all possibilities, all statics and potentials. Right? And that's why this self-will comes in, and it's so close, so important that they're talking about here. It is the will of God that this happens. And do you think anything happens that is not the will of God? No. Do you think our rebellion is not the will of God? Think about this. When you rebel against God, do you think it's the will of God that you do? It's a good question, because He allows us to rebel to learn why not to rebel, doesn't He? So the I am encompasses all of that, right? And when you have imperfection, what do you have the possibility of? Rebellion. Well, you have perfection and rebellion, right? So anytime you have imperfection, you always have a possibility of error. Now, where will you not have error? Paradise, right? Paradise doesn't have error. It doesn't have evil. It doesn't have sin. Why? Because it's perfect. Okay? That's what they're talking about here. He allows these things to happen. Do you think God could stop all evil like that? Of course He could. Yeah.
But if He, being a just God, if he was just justice, then we would instantly be convicted of our sins or our mistakes. And then we would be annihilated.
Yeah.
But with mercy of His Son, the eternal Son, it allows us room to make mistakes and then have the opportunity to be remorseful and to repent, basically, and get back on the right track.
And what does that cause? It causes growth.
It does, yeah.
It causes
And
growth.
so it's part of His plan. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
That's right. Think about this. We complain about this planet constantly. But since we've been such a close association with evil on this planet, what do you think happens when we grow past this planet and we make it paradise? We're available to go out to the 4 outer space levels, right? Do you think that understanding this process of evil and the results of evil, what's the results of evil? The wages of sin or death is death, right? Eventually you'll be annihilated because you will not fit in the universe. An orderly universe will not allow you to continue on. Okay? So do you think those children are valuable as administrators of the outer space levels? Of course they are. They've already been there. They know what evil does. They know what sin does. They know the destructiveness of not following the plans of God. Right? And then people say, why does God let evil exist? He doesn't. does he? Think about this.
It's a manifestation of non-perfection.
That's right, it's a
Imperfection.
manifestation of non-perfection. That's a perfect explanation. Plus the fact that it is a result of our own free will, isn't it? It's a free will choice. We can choose to be perfect in this life, can't we? It's hard to do because we got so much evil around us. We live in evil. We don't live in sin, do we? People think, oh, we all live in sin. No, we choose sin. We live in evil. There's a difference. Sin doesn't become sin until it becomes what? Rebellion. When you rebel against God, that becomes sin. That's the difference. These decisions on morals and all that stuff, that's not sin. People, they're going to hate me when they hear these videos. When you choose against a standard moral of your day and time, is that sin? No. What's sin? Sin is rebellion against God. Now, it may be wrong, it may be evil, it may be a lot of different things, but it doesn't turn into sin until when? It is knowledgeable rebellion against God. That's what sin is.
Conscious
Rebellion against God. That's right. Now, if you do something that you consider as a sin, and the reason you consider it's a sin is because your value system, that don't make it a sin. What turns it into a sin is you know it's wrong and you know it's against the will of God for your life, then you do it. Is that a sin? Of course it is. Because why? You're rebelling against God. It's all in how you view things, right?
It says in the book somewhere that for those who are seeking the truth and seeking to do the will of God, the thought adjuster is always going to be there to point you the way.
This is the way. That's right.
This is the way to go.
That's
if you're seeking
the will of God.
To do the will of God.
That's right. That's right. Okay, let's keep going.
The finite mind, there simply must be a beginning, and though there never was a real beginning to reality, still there are certain source relationships which reality manifests to infinity. The pre-reality, primordial, eternity situation may be thought of something like this. At some infinitely distant, hypothetical, past eternity moment, the I am may be conceived as both thing and no thing, as both cause and effect, as both volition and response. As this hypothetical eternity moment, there is no differentiation throughout all infinity. Infinity is filled by the infinite. The infinite encompasses infinity. This is the hypothetical static moment of eternity. Actuals are still contained within their potentials, and potentials have not yet appeared within the infinity of the I am. But even in this conjecture situation, we must assume the existence of the possibility of self-will.
So what it's saying is, even if there was a point in time in the past where there was no Son, there was no Spirit, okay, the Father still contained all this, right? That He was the I am. And all the potentials and all the will and everything else still was there, right? There never was a time when there wasn't a Father, right? Or a I am, okay? And you notice here they say the hypothetical, right? Because what they're saying here is it's always existed. This is so that we can get our heads around it, right? So if you need a sequence of events, a pre-time to eternity, it would be here.
Who does not have self-will?
There are several creatures in the universe that does not have self-will. The Sporanga, these are beings that do not have souls. If you don't have a soul, you would not have a self-will. You would be controlled basically by the local universe mother spirits. That's the best way I can say it. You would have reflex. You would have intuitions. You would probably have a mothering instinct. You would probably have almost all the instincts except what two? Worship and wisdom. Yeah.
And those power beings.
Yeah. Power regulators and things like that, they may not have free will. They just function. this is the way they've done it, it's the way they've always done it, and that's the way they know they're supposed to do it, and they don't ever deviate.
So the seraphim have self-will?
Self-will. They're self-willed creatures, yeah.
So,
All the ministering spirits have self-will. And that is why what? They can fall into rebellion too. Okay? If you don't have self-will, would you fall into rebellion? No. You would know to fall in rebellion. Right?
And they don't have thought adjusters.
They don't have thought adjusters. No. There's no father fragment there to guide them. Okay? Those type of beings would be the children of the local universe, right? That's what they would be. And would they go outside the universe? No. They would always stay children of the local universe. They would be the permanent population of a universe. Always. Now, we talk about there being no reincarnation on this planet, right? And there's not. But don't you think that those type beings on the other planets, the mansion worlds, and don't you think they say they're reused? The same energy force. For those, you could say, in essence, that's a form of reincarnation, because that whatever it is that makes them who they are is just reused and put into a new being.
Recycled.
Huh? Recycled. Yeah, when they wear out. That's right.
Interesting that they wear out.
Yeah, well, everything in the universe. You know, it's kind of funny. Men, when we built all these monuments and all these things, these churches and things back in the early Christian church, look at the beautiful monuments they built, the churches and stuff like that. And they built them thinking these will last thousands and thousands of years. But look how fast everything disintegrates. Very few things last forever. Very few things. And even the pyramids, they're however old they are, even they have started to disintegrate in a sense. The outside of them starts breaking down. There's nothing in this universe physical that stays forever, does it? It breaks down and they have to redo it. They even talk about are the planets permanent? No. The planets may go on for several billion years, but they burn out too and go away. Right? Mm-hmm. Which planets do not do that? Those are the architectural spheres, right? They're built more perfectly, so they last for eons and eons.
Even the suns will burn out.
Even the suns burn out after a period of time, right? So there's no such thing as permanency unless it's paradise, right? Of the one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
well, it makes you wonder once the 7 super universes are settled in light and life, what becomes permanent then?
They recycle the planets.
It's
They
still
won't always-
yeah.
Yeah, it's just like the beings. If you have a planet that burns out, or disintegrates, what do you think happens? They just replace it with another planet, right? This process takes billions and billions and billions of years, but in the look of eternity, it's nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look how long it took Michael to go through his 7 super universes. Over 1 billion years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to do his 7 bestowals, right? You want to restart that? Restart this. We need to break up here. Anybody going to the other meeting today? Okay, I just want to make sure you're going to the other meeting. No? As soon as she restarts, we'll start on the next paragraph.
It's going to be interesting to understand better how how God determines our personalities and sends those.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because the book says that we're all different. There's not one that He's created that is like any other one.
That's
personality. Right. We're all completely unique. So it's going to be so interesting to understand that more.
Yeah.
To me, anyway.
Yeah, it will be.
Mm-hmm.
You ready?
Okay.
Okay, let's go on to the next paragraph. Let's try to finish this slide.
Ever remember that man's comprehension of the universal Father is a personal experience. God, as your spiritual Father, is comprehensible to you and to all other mortals, but your experiential worshipful concept of the universal Father must always be less than your philosophical postulate of the infinity of the first source and center, the I am. When we speak of the Father, we mean God. It is God as he is understandable by his creatures, both high and low. But there is much more of deity which is not comprehensible to universe creatures. God, your Father, and my Father is that phase of the infinite which we perceive in our personalities as an actual experiential reality. But the I am ever remains as our hypothesis of all that we feel is unknowable of the first source and center. And even that hypothesis probably falls far short of the unfathomed infinity of original reality.
So our concepts are always going to be less than what is reality, then, right?
And we still have people on this planet who don't recognize God as a father.
We do. Lots of them.
Lots of them.
And a lot of people on this planet don't understand this next line. Growth of the Trinity, they don't understand the Trinity at all. Lots of them. All
I
right,
mean,
we're
if you
gonna
don't
put-
believe the Father, how could you? I mean, you can't, how could you?
Yeah. Well, let's say a little prayer, knock off for today. And we'll take it up from here next week. Now, remember, next week is our last week at this location. Okay, let's say a little prayer. Father, thank you for such a wonderful day and beautiful meeting. Thank you for allowing us this time to share with each other. And thank you for Phyllis and Rodney for letting us come into their home and share these concepts, and pray that you'll bless our new location when we get over there. And we want to thank you for the knowledge we gain and the experience we gain each time we do this, and the fellowship with one another. We thank you and we praise you in the name of your Son, Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen.
Amen.
You get this one too, dear?
Yeah.
All right, y'all.